Welcome back to CRECollaborative Roundtable, your all-in-one comprehensive view of what's happening across the real estate industry, straight from some of the industry's earliest technology adopters and foremost experts in technology, marketing, capital, finance, brokerage, government policy, and cybersecurity. As always, this is a three-part show. Part one, introductions to our roundtable hosts. Part two, sector focus. We unpack the biggest trends, shifts in the industry. And part three, what does it mean for your business and how can you outpace your competition? I'm Andreas, Senie, founder, CRECollaborative, brokerage owner, and commercial director at CRECo.ai. Joining me this month is none other, the one and only Rebecca Carlson. Welcome. Nice to see you as always, Becca. And Saul Klein also joining us as usual. Dan Wagner could not make it this month, and Chris Abel could not make it, but Professor Darren Hayes, will join us partway through. Excited to talk through and hear what the latest and greatest is. Rebecca, you're to my right. Nice to see you. What's going on in your world?
Well, I am coming to you straight from the Grant Park room here at Plant Moran, visiting my dear friend Laura Havel, who runs the real estate valuations practice here, and who has been so kind to let me use this room that's named after one of our Chicago landmarks. So hello, great to be back this month, Andreas.
Fantastic. Thank you to Plant Moran for letting you have a stable connection, not to mention being part of your network and growing together. Saul, I know you're not in front of your car wash, but are you back with us from San Diego MLS? Excuse me.
Yeah.
How are things on your end as well?
You know, some things never change. Great to see you guys. Always good to get together here once a month and talk about whatever is hot in the real estate industry. And everybody's always interested in real estate, so it's our favorite subject.
Well, it's and I'm going to follow you from last month. It's my wife's birthday today. So first and foremost, I want to say happy birthday to my wife, the love of my life and star of my day-to-day. So thank you for that, Saul. I'm copying you. You did it first last month for yours. And as far as real estate and everybody tuning in, yes, 4,500 tune-ins and downloads monthly. We are a global show. 70% of our audience in the U.S., the rest overseas, which I think dovetails perfectly to what you're doing, Saul. Globally, right? You've got Get Occupy, you've got a lot of things working, Rezo and standards. You want to touch on that a bit? What's the latest and greatest? Darren Hayes, I'm going to drop him in. He just joined the waiting. Go ahead, Saul.
There's Darren.
There he is.
Hey there. How are you? Good evening.
Good evening. So the great Darren Hayes, Professor Darren Hayes, top 10 cyber forensic security specialist in our country and abroad, I dare say. Nice to see you as well, Darren. We were just asking Saul what the latest is on data standards, MLS, and global markets as far as his point of view, and then coming over to you.
Yeah, so, the data standards conversation is an old one. And we've got this organization, RESO, which is the Real Estate Standards Organization. And the idea is to, if you're familiar with multiple listing services, which is where most of the data that feeds portals come from, they come from the multiple listing services. Typically, and you've heard this before, all real estate is local. And so we have our own ways to describe real estate based on the local community. We have different, because it's evolved over time, different fields to describe different aspects, physical aspects of real estate. We have different abbreviations to describe them. As an example, BR might be bedroom, and BD might be bedroom, and bathroom might be BTH. And because we've
got buyer rep if we're commercial. But yes, go on.
So you need some standards, because if you don't, it makes it incredibly expensive to write software and inefficient. So the Real Estate Standards Organization has been around for a number of years, has created something called a data dictionary, constantly working on it. So when data is pulled from one multiple listing service and data is pulled from another one, that all the fields, or close to all the fields, match up. and they're mapped accordingly so that you can have consistency when you're searching for real estate. So when people go to all these big portals like Zillow and Trulia and Realtor.com, everything just kind of appears. What they probably don't realize is behind the scenes, there are often issues that need to be solved. There's loss of fidelity in the data, there's loss of images. It's not as nice as it seems when you go to the portals. And so this is all about data management and data standards. And RESO's got an international push around data standards. As a matter of fact, in Toronto, um, later this month is the International MLS, the third International MLS Forum. It follows CMLS, which is the Council of Multiple Listing Services in Toronto. So lots going on in the MLS world and the data world, MLS data world.
And so for those of us who are commercial practitioners, I happen to belong to the MLS because of my association with the National Association of Realtors. But the spoiled world of residential is that there's this standard and there's this exchange of data, this widespread adoption. That's RESO's mission, the adoption of this data standard to help the real estate sector avoid costly custom integrations, incompatible data, seamless interoperability, lower costs, all things that I know Darren's going, wait a minute, seamless and ease of access, that might be a problem. But no, residential's really solved this and solved it to such a degree in the US that it's now gone global. You guys are pushing overseas to do the same. Is that a good summary, Saul?
Yeah, no, and it's interesting to follow and to pay attention to. And like I said, everything looks great when we're looking at it on different websites. But I can tell you behind the scenes, we've got every day there's new issues with things that aren't appearing or are appearing, things that need to be corrected. So it's interesting. It's fun to see what takes place in this world around what's so valuable to everyone, which is this data around real estate, and then all the consumer behavioral data around that, and then products that are built around that, and then the piracy around, people like to steal the data, the gray market, or they'll just go and scrape and take data and utilize data as they see fit. So it's always something.
So I always laugh because as a commercial broker, we have 29 quality listing portals that exist, right? So LoopNet is the one everyone knows, right? And it's the biggest behemoth in our space commercially. And our end users, our investors, our tenants go, well, what do you mean? Well, LoopNet is a site that isn't updated within 72 hours, unlike the MLS, unlike this data standardization. And to your point, the end picture, what a user, consumer, prospect sees matters. And it's difficult to get that same picture on every platform and everywhere. So thank you for your work there and RESO for all they've done. Speaking of standards, technology, pictures, I'm going to go first to Darren on the cybersecurity front and all of those things, then over to Becca. Now we're really having a tech and marketing conversation. We've got the best people to have that. Darren, how are things in your side of the fence industry?
Things are good. Just very hectic in terms of trying to get the expertise and students internationally has been a little bit of a challenge. Hopefully that things will improve there, but we really need more people in the tech industry, especially in AI, because it is really a big battle that we're doing with countries like China and who is going to lead the market in terms of AI, because AI is just spoken about in every context today. I was just reading about the US Army has just signed a contract with a company in San Francisco about carrying AI with them into battlefield. So when they lose communications, how they are going to be able to identify enemy drones in the area and so forth, when signal jammers are being used by our adversaries. AI and these, I don't know whether, Andreas, you bought a pair of these Ray-Ban Meta AI glasses or that kind of thing?
AI may answer my phone and it may take my notes and it may, I promise never to anyone in this on this meeting that gets email from me, may write my emails. No, I don't have the glasses. That's one step.
Okay,
That's a bridge
okay.
too far.
But well, it's interesting because I'm part of a group kind of law enforcement who help each other with coming up with different solutions where homicides occur or shootings happen and that kind of thing. And actually, there's been a number of people who've started asking questions about how to download data from these glasses. So we have, somebody who was a victim in a homicide, and they did have a pair of these Meta AI glasses. What do I do now? Is there anything that I can get from those? So AI is also coming up as a source of evidence as well.
I mean, it's incredibly invasive. AI is everywhere, and it's doing a myriad of things across every industry, real estate included. I've been a big fan of a simple statement. AI is not going to replace a real estate practitioner, but an AI-enabled agent, a professional that uses AI will. It's that combination of the two, and it's scary in its breadth and scope, what it can do or can't do. I still lean back and say it's a day one intern. It hallucinates. It doesn't do everything right. You need to understand and have the knowledge to understand or point out when it's going awry.
Okay. Can you ever picture a day though where somebody's wearing these kind of AI glasses and they're looking at a building that they're interested in and they're getting feedback on that building through their glasses? I mean,
so that exists. The AI component may not be there, and it may be, but it exists today. That there are massive, billion-dollar cap companies that have the virtual walkthrough technology. They have engineers that are not necessarily offsite, but a level 1 engineer. It's not there. The level 2 guy is looking through his Google lens, and it's identifying the hardware and the problems. It's feeding back to the AI, supervised again by a real person today. So can I see it? Yes. And Saul would say you could absolutely replace us entirely soon. That's his. I think it's a fair statement.
So I want to remind you, Andreas, that when I started to get involved in technology, people said to me that the internet's a fad. People said to me that the internet wasn't going anywhere. People said to me that you'll never use email in your business because everybody will always want to pick up the phone and call me. And so we created a company, and we call that company Internet Crusade, because we believe that if you were going to go out and change people's minds, because that's what needed to be done, you had to be a crusader. You had to be willing to beat your head against the wall and hear, no, 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 this will never happen. This will never replace us. And you had to be willing to go out and beat your head against the wall more and say, yes, it will happen. It's going to happen. And guess what? It happened. So I believe that we can't imagine where it's going. And so it's premature to say that will never replace real estate agents. I don't
Not in my lifetime.
I don't know. Things are moving so fast that I can't predict that, right? And so I would rather be ready for the cliff than see the cliff a foot before I get to it.
It's really interesting because I
go ahead.
you, sir. No, I was just going to say I just read an interesting article about all of these domains ending in .ai being bought up, and basically I did a test. I looked up maybe 200 different words that I could use with .ai at the end of it as a domain. They've all been taken. People have spent millions on buying all of these up, and it just happened that years ago, before AI, the country, tiny country in the Caribbean, not too far from Puerto Rico, and
the original AI extension.
Anguilla is it's the country. It's the country domain for Anguilla. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. But that domain, if you want to register one, I think it's like $150 a year or something. It's ludicrous. So people are obviously spending millions and millions buying up these domains.
Well, that's a careful statement because now we're talking about the URL era and the internet and all of that. Members of NAR were given the option to buy their AI domains because they bought them, I guess, in bulk. They optioned them early. And it may not be the case anymore, but you're both right. Is it coming? Is it happening? Absolutely. Look, a year ago, I said I'd never use AI for anything. Now I'm using it for voice, email. It's there. I mean, Mark and over to Becca, right? Domains, marketing, AI. How much has AI impeded or invaded your business, the marketing side? And I say that with respect to AI, and I think it's coming. It's not.
Well, it's a tool. It's a phenomenal tool. And it needs to be wielded like a tool in that you check your work. So all of those initial conversations that we have still hold true. You got to check it. Yeah. But it has a phenomenal ability to expedite various aspects of processes that are really important and crucial. And my best use case is that we had to do a very, very complex macro-enabled report for uploading student completions for insurance continuing education to various states. Well, having AI help create that code for that spreadsheet saved the poor Upwork guy who quoted us 17 hours to build this complex spreadsheet. Well, we were able to do it in 2 using AI prompts, including a magic button that actually, so the client could input the data, push the magic button, and everything happens properly. The client is so happy. We've gone through 3 LMS, 3 learning management systems, and have spent probably 200 hours building out reports for these various systems over the past several years. We have a solution that actually made our client happy and able to do the next step of ensuring that the states have all of these continuing education completions in a very streamlined manner. And to me, that's the best AI use case, is how can it expedite processes that are highly time intensive that don't actually need to be.
I was going to say highly arduous and just painstaking, right? Painstaking work. But that lends the question to Darren advised me very well on cybersecurity issues back when I was a hack victim. He said, the easier it is, the more seamless the login, the more times it works for you and not with you, it just happens. The easier it is to corrupt and be bad. One on the, check your work, completely agree. Even the MLS, to Saul's earlier point last month, we use it. We're checking questions and data, like you mentioned. But is that the risk today? What is the risk to everything on the AI side if it becomes so seamless and so easy? Is there a security risk? Is there a business risk? That one's to you, Darren, first. And then I'm going to pick up Saul.
Hold on. I want to add, hold on.
Go ahead.
I have to spend with this, Andreas.
Go ahead.
Okay. We use fake data to build it out. We did not upload any student data. We needed the macros, right? We needed the functionality, which could easily be done and created without using real data. And that is critical. We have a data and AI policy at CI, and we are a little company. And we literally have just completed our policy so that we have it very, very formally of what can and cannot be entered into AI. And anything that would be considered any even remotely confidential client data, anything retrievable under an NDA, anything that's not public knowledge is absolutely forbidden for our team to put into any semblance of AI. Even a closed system.
As a small but mighty company, it's easier for you to implement and have that ready to go. I educate brokers. I do continuing ed. One of the courses we're going to teach in October is that. It's like AI do's and don'ts. That's not what we're calling it because we can't, but effectively the end case is, hey, if you upload even what you see as anonymous data into AI, into ChatGPT, you're now crowdsourcing that comp data, that market data, those rental rates, those expenses all get in there. So good for you and having it and being first. Many companies aren't. And that was the big news. It was engineers putting in blueprints and putting in code. All of a sudden, it was gone. Back to Darren. How easily can we misuse it or be abused from it? Because we've now created a point of attack for bad actors. Great point.
Well, I think for bad actors, the worst kind of malware or social engineering attacks happen with malware as a service. It's happened with ransomware as a service, where you have an actual business where maybe they actually don't launch the attack. They will sell you a kit, and that kit has a dashboard with, how productive your ransomware is, has a Bitcoin exchange or Ethereum exchange, how you can have marketing statistics on how effective your malware is, what countries is it going to, and so AI just facilitates all of that. AI also is more and more facilitating social engineering attacks, because you can get somebody to interact with you as somebody else, and so that's I think, because it mimics human behavior so well. That's the biggest threat in terms of AI for cyber attacks. I think one of those types of attacks that I've heard about a lot, and it hasn't made the news, is sextortion. So sextortion has become a very, very big problem. I know people personally who've been impacted by this. It happens to mainly boys, where stolen credentials are used to contact somebody. And this is why it's important to have a good conversation with your kids to see if they have been interacting with anybody, to notice any changes in their behavior. Maybe they become a little bit more depressed. But what happens is those stolen credentials are used to send somebody from, say, an Instagram account contacting a boy and say, hey, you're in my class. I think you're really nice. And then they send a compromising picture, and then suddenly they're told, oh, I'm going to expose you online unless you send me, $1,000 or $10,000 or something like that. And it's a huge problem. There's a lot of suicides in this country because of this.
But to Saul's point, sextortion, for those that don't know, it's exploitation and blackmail, which the perpetrator threatens to expose whatever you've shared. And AI now lets them do that 100 times a minute, or however, right? Because it's not somebody writing it themselves. And yes, back to Saul and Becca's point, it's accelerating the replacement of the blackmailer. Now that one blackmailer can act as hundreds in that same minute with AI instead of fair summary. That's the real risk.
Yes.
But AI is also helpful, right? It's reducing workload. It lets me manage my inbox of 500 and 70, 80 missed calls a day down to action that bites. It lets the MLS, to Saul here, handle the chat in requests or help requests and auditing of input documentation. I believe that's where you left off as far as San Diego MLS. Or is that expanded?
Yeah, I think I probably mentioned it in the previous call, but we use it to audit photos. So we've got an MLS, we've got 11,000 members, we've probably got 6,000 listings at any point in time. People probably load 5 to 15 photos, and we've got rules about, you can't have people in the photos for fair housing reasons. Interesting. You can't have pets in there. Like, we have all these rules. Well, how do you go through tens of thousands of images to find out if there are violations? And the answer is you really can't do it. But with AI, you can. Now, unfortunately, the AI is not perfect. So like, you can't have an image of an animal. And sometimes it picks up, the AI will pick up like a statue of an animal. And it'll then notify us that there's a violation, and so we have to have people that kind of go look at us. That's not really a violation.
That's a point back to me. So back to the people with the AI. It's not ready to replace them.
not yet, but it's trainable, right? So you have to use it, and but the photo thing's interesting because it's like a joke around here when we find these things. Also, we can look at the remarks section in a listing where real estate agents and brokers enter remarks, and there's certain things you can say in a remarks section, and there's certain things you can't say in a remarks section. So the AI helps us police the data that goes into the MLS. So yeah, a lot of good uses, and that doesn't mean that it's perfect yet, but it's an evolution. And I'll take you back. I remember before. Now, I actually remember when there was no internet, and then I remember about 1968 when I was a student, when I was a midshipman at the Naval Academy, and they introduced the internet to us, and we had to use it in classes, and it was this bizarre kind of thing because we had this computer terminal, but we didn't have a monitor. Everything would kind of come out on this yellow paper, and you had to read everything that came out. So prior to the internet, there were these things that we referred to as Nigerian banking scams. And
I've gotten one of those recently. That's still a thing.
So we would get letters, right? And I remember first getting into real estate, getting these letters, and it's like, imagine now everybody's kind of hip to this now, right? But back then it was actually a letter. They had to go to the trouble to write letters. Nigerian banking scam. I'm a prince from Nigeria, and right in a letter. Well, of course, now with the internet, what's happened, that's evolved to, as you mentioned, a lot more letters can go out to a lot more people in a lot shorter period of time. And then that's kind of evolved into phishing scams and more ways that people can use this in a negative way. But human beings, getting back to Darren's point, that's like, it's human beings, right? There are going to be ways to exploit this, and we're going to discover these ways, and we're going to stay on top. But that doesn't mean we should avoid it. We have to figure out ways that we can use it in our business. And as Becca said, use it to improve some of the processes and things we do. And the more we use it, the better we'll be at finding new uses for it. And the better we'll get at identifying the mal use of it.
The Prince scam, right? We all know, if we get that letter today, anyone and everyone knows, hey, that's not a good letter. But there's still many people, sadly, are still fooled by now the AI phone call, to Darren's earlier statement. Hey, it's so-and-so, your cousin. I'm in trouble. Send me money. And they took that from the internet, they copied the voice, and they went from there. Is there, just like AI is being used for good, I assume that AI is now combating the bad, right? Checking conversation wherever we can implement it. Is that a fair statement? Darren?
Yeah, all you need, I guess, is 7 seconds of somebody's voice to really kind of create a conversation, a realistic conversation.
So we're all AI bots somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. But I would say that most of the crime that is happening today is still kind of an actual person being involved. And one of the things I've seen recently in terms of crime is people calling up and saying, I have your mother, she's going to be killed. You need to send this money right now. And that's a crime that's not using AI. It's not using a lot of technology, but it's just changing, a caller ID or having some personal information about that person. And, they'll get a lot of hits. People will send thousands of dollars to this person. But they are masking their phone number, which is very easy to do, to mask your caller ID. But so that traditional crime is still there. It's still the biggest problem. I think one of the issues that law enforcement are dealing with is, jurisdictions where you cannot use facial ID in investigations. San Francisco is one of those places where facial ID is problematic, but sometimes it's the only way of finding the bad guys.
Well, sir, you mentioned the glasses earlier, and it was a surprise to me when you brought this up a show or two ago. But for instance, I love my Apple Watch. I wear it when I'm not overloaded at work because of the alerts. But if I'm passing by a crime, it's collecting that data and it's stored that data and it actually shares that with the police in some instances. And the glasses are another extension of that in theory, right? Where does the data go and how's it stored and how can it be used? Both to help fight crime and some cases, sadly, perpetrate crime. So the reality is anything the government can do to stop crime, that actor could also employ the same technology to fight. There's the rub. But you still need a human. So again, point to me. AI is not replacing anyone on this call. And to Saul's and to Darren's earlier point, Darren's looking for good people, not AI to keep us moving, even when the AI is there. So along that thread, AI, people, marketing. I mean, how is it all impacting marketing? If AI is the smart thing that can do all the heavy work, not the senior executive level work. Has that impacted marketing? Are people shifting to AI? Go ahead. Did you lose me? Back us?
Oh, sorry about that. We had a train go by.
Technical. The question was, with all of AI's implications in the industry, good and bad, in industry-wide, has that changed marketing for the better or worse? People, tools?
I think one of the biggest challenges I'm seeing is staffing. There are a lot of people looking for jobs. There are a lot of people who don't know if they're going to get jobs. And some of those are new grads, some of those are established professionals. But that's probably one of the biggest impacts that I'm seeing is simply that companies don't know how to staff right now. And so marketing departments are minimized and or people graduating with marketing degrees are expected to come out of school with this expertise in AI that they may not have gotten in their traditional classes as curriculum catches up with the
Becca cut out on my end. I'm not sure if she cut out with everyone else. So what we're talking about is an educational gap on AI skill set. Is that resonating across the MLS, across cybersecurity? I mean, not having that skill set. To me, AI is kind of plug and play. You just kind of use it. Maybe use it to teach it to you.
What are you seeing, Andreas?
Thank you. Just got that. I'll answer that. How is AI used in real estate, residential and commercial? We're just barely starting to use it. We are using it, as I said, answering phones, taking notes. Nothing really deeper than that, I hope, for most practitioners. And I think Saul and the MLS is the same. They're using it for the grunt work that is siloed away from the public. That's how I'll say it. And I think cybersecurity the same way. They can do some grunt work, but nothing forward facing. While all of us on this call, we're all live and we're happy to be so because we all trust that we're all going to say the right things. We've done this before. Nobody trusts AI to be public facing today, right? You have to check it. I think is my answer. Nobody's trusting it to be your front man.
You know,
I think for us,
I've seen some pretty interesting new voice search with AI. That's kind of interesting, right? Where instead of the traditional, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,500 square feet, 2-bedroom house. Instead of that, you just speak to the system. You say, I'm moving to Florida from California. I'm looking for a single level home. I've got a mother-in-law that needs to live with us, right? And you just give it a story. And then it finds all of the listed properties that match your story. And I like to swim, so I need a swimming pool, but it has to be, and you just talk it. And so the search capability with, finding property anyway, we're starting to see that already. Last couple of years, I've experienced some of this.
Well, that's not and Becca had to drop off. She had an internet connection issue, but that's not a new trend. that goes back to Alexa Dot and lights and everything else, right? Until we found a function that the Alexa Dot voice recognition could service, like, hey, shut off my lights. That's what propelled it forward. That's not AI strictly. Or are you saying that's an AI driven?
A component, right? To be able to do this, to be able to find this within the database.
Well, and so now I'm going to go to Darren, because now we've got foremost technology adoption and pioneer, Saul, and Darren, cybersecurity. How much of today's world is being propelled by voice and AI as opposed to what was? It's AI is just a component. It's not the underlying code. It's just accelerating. I guess is my question, my statement. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, I think we have an issue with across education and the use of AI, and students are using it more and more to complete assignments. They're not necessarily learning the content. They're not buying books. And how do you prove that somebody was using AI? Sometimes it's a question of matching up some of their work with other work and saying it's pretty clear that this is not the way you normally write. But some of these tools that we use to identify whether somebody is using AI, they give you a match and they say maybe this is 85% likely that somebody used AI. Well, can you really use that to prove that somebody actually used AI? So the other issue as well is technology in the home, Internet of Things, and where is that information going? And I think that a lot of people don't think about in the workplace, the cameras that they have in the room, and they're talking about very sensitive information. And I know for a fact that many of these cheap cameras, it's usually the cheapest cameras that people buy for conference rooms, for security purposes. The biggest drone company we know is taking all that information and beaming it back to a country a little east of us, or depending on what coast you're on, a little west of us. And that becomes an issue. I don't think that people are thinking about technology in the home. I don't think people are thinking about technology at work and the kind of sensitive conversations we're having and how that information is being transmitted to servers in other countries. And that has huge implications in terms of theft of intellectual property.
Well, and well said, right? So and this is not a knock against Google. I use Microsoft Enterprise everything for my company. Mine, it's black box, it's secure. If you use Google free service for your business, Google reads, it's in their terms of service. They read everything and they send everything. It's all open to their models. I'll say that. As opposed to subscribing for an MLS or any others, you have to be very careful about terms of service, right? What are they doing with your data? Who accesses your data? Where's that data stored? How's it transmitted? These are all data policy issues, back to the earlier conversation on standards. These are all things the industry here is trying to protect against, but to Becca's earlier statement, it takes time to catch up, just like regulations take time to be put into place. We're moving too fast, which was Saul's point. It's all coming. AI will replace us, but not in my lifetime. At least that's what I say. But maybe soon. The standards there, the regulations there to protect against us. It's moving too fast.
There's also an issue of who's responsible for policing everything, and so there's one of the types of investigations that I support is crimes against children, crimes against women, human trafficking, as I mentioned before, and a lot of this happens, through Google platforms, through Microsoft platforms, through Meta and so forth. A lot of tech companies are saying we're not responsible for distribution of illicit images of children, or we're not responsible for the bad things that people do on our platforms. And so there's this big discussion about who is responsible, and a lot of tech companies are saying we're not law enforcement, we're not responsible for the type of content that is being spread around, we're not responsible for scams, we're not responsible for sextortion, things that happen. So that's it. It's a big conversation that's happening at the moment, and it's something also that the government is considering as well, because you have, companies that are lobbying for to make money, and then you have and collect this information, and then you have other people who are saying, well, we actually have to protect our children, and there is some responsibility for the tech companies to help protect our kids.
And that's whenever let's protect our kids, and that's a very important sideline. But that's an easy parallel. Commercial real estate, the biggest action taken by major players, CoStar being one of them. They've sued competitors for taking images and reposting them. There are safe harbor laws in place for digital work. There are a lot of things protecting free press, which is what big tech companies say. Hey, I'm not the guy posting it. I'm just facilitating the distribution of news or public opinion. So you're opening a big can of discussion. Let me say it that way. But how do we protect our kids? And that's the only, when they take that approach, it resonates, because we should protect our kids. Everyone would agree. But it's a difficult one. As Saul just said.
There's even tech companies going against tech companies now, because Apple has accused Google, for example, of requesting more information from your iPhone than is necessary to use that Google product. And they're saying they're taking advantage of, taking more private information from people from their phone than they actually need to operate a particular application. And so there's even a battle going on from tech company to tech company.
I knew we'd get back around to real estate.
Yeah.
So there is also litigation right now where CoStar is suing Zillow, and it has to do with the use of Matterport or other types of photo. And this is not new. This kind of thing is not new. It's been going on for a long while. I remember when I was CEO of Point2 back around 2009, Realtors were uploading images that they found on the internet. They weren't their image. They were uploading other people's images of property. And we actually got notification from Getty Images and to say this is our photo and it's $1,000 fine. And we got a bunch of NAR actually stepped into that and settled that lawsuit. So copyright is kind of an interesting issue, although I've always been I read it somewhere, I've always been of the mind that I was more afraid of anonymity than I was of copyright infringement. So people could take my stuff all they wanted, post it anywhere they wanted, and I would gladly take the publicity. But that's ongoing, way before we got into these discussions around AI. Copyright's a whole nother area, right? Another subject.
Well, and then there's how does it go? Imitation is copyright. Copying is the finest form of flattery. Assuming we change it 10 or 15%, whatever the required law is on the required medium. And I'm not discounting moving away from the child photos and all the things they're bringing up, but it's a great parallel. The business case is solid. It happens. It's easier, right? If we take bad actors into account, how do we prevent that? And if we can solve it with AI, if we can check the images, like Saul's saying, for copyright, for ownership, for all of the things, maybe we can take that business case and that, let's be honest, the money that was spent to solve a business problem and use it to solve a criminal problem. That's a win for everyone. But someone has to pay to solve it and create it. And that's where AI is getting the funding. And Google and Microsoft fighting at each other, hopefully will result in good things.
Well, Darren, was it you that was telling us about in police work where they can identify what type of drugs people are on by the expressions? I thought that was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Just being able to, by the somebody speaking voice, being able to identify whether somebody might be, taking heroin or cocaine versus marijuana or something like that, or taking a voice clip and identifying how old that person is, and maybe even creating a visual of that person's face based on their voice.
Wow.
So there's lots of things happening with that. Cars are becoming more important in investigations because, you might think, well, there's no closed circuit television around here, that caught this shooting, but then people start to think about a Tesla, which is motion activated, and they have cameras that start recording, when they think there might have been an incident like an accident, and that, like a bullet can trigger that video capture. And so more and more cars are doing this video capture, which can help with investigations as well.
That's how you use the data once it's captured,
Yeah.
right? That's really the underlying theme I'm hearing throughout this. Is that there's ways to use it well, or be a good actor, and ways to be a bad actor. And AI is simply getting us access or scrubbing more data much faster than a human could, and in new ways compared to machine learning into algorithms. That being said, I am curious while we're talking interoperability. We have Rezo, we have standards in the U.S. But as far as other marketplaces globally and active exchange of data, is that on a growth trajectory for the MLS? Are we still pumping data everywhere? And then, Darren, as a second note, what are other countries doing to stop that type of exchange? So how we use the data matters.
Yeah, so we do exchange or share a lot of MLS data. As a matter of fact, we've made a transition here where we were using something referred to as a real estate transaction standard, or RETS, and we've converted recently all of our vendors who receive data from us for different purposes to API. So different transport mechanism to get the data to different people who will use this data in different ways, and will pay the MLS for the use of the data based on what they're going to use it for. That's how we determine how we're going to charge them, and lots of interesting things around the disposition of the data, being able to see and determine if it's being used in the way in which it was licensed, or if there's a violation of the licensing of the data. And then there are just those entities that just go out and steal the data off of websites, right? And they just scrape that data and they use it for different purposes. I'll give you an example. We started to receive solicitations from, and I've been saying this for years and thought we were going to be able to do it at the MLS, but we started to get solicitations from pool contractors. And so, how did they get that data? Did they get it from the MLS? Well, they didn't have to. They probably could go to a website like Zillow, scrape all of the residential property to find out which properties have swimming pools, sell that data to a swimming pool contractor, and all of a sudden you're getting emails from swimming pool contractors about, fixing the pool, or roofing contractors, right? That data can be scraped from these sites and can be compiled, and then it can be sold to roofing contractors, who will then be able to figure out which roofs are 20 years old or more and need to be replaced, and then send emails out to those people who have got those older roofs that need to there's all kinds of things happening.
Well, that's the arduous task that AI has made simple.
Yeah.
The media, right? The AI engine looks at the images, and I get it, right? RETS, API from RETS. I always joke, I'm like, well, it's easy to take a screen grab. You'll notice sometimes now when you're on a website, you can't. There are safeguards in place. API is the evolution from RETS to safeguard the data exchange. To be fair, I think. At least that's how I summarize to people. And I think fondly of the residential, postlets, right? It was data here and it goes out everywhere. Which then brings us to the second stage question with Darren. Globally, I mean, how we use data matters, where it comes from matters. Is there anything happening on your side of the fence to protect our data? That's the question.
Nothing in this country, really.
Or any country,
unfortunately.
to be fair. Well,
Yeah.
no, Ireland and the UK have stricter regulations.
There are stricter regulations because of GDPR and some other, not just GDPR, they also have their own local laws, which is good in a way. Obviously, you're protecting your data more, but the other part of it is that it can also make investigations harder. But there again, just because it's harder doesn't mean that it's wrong in an investigation. Sometimes things are harder, but it's a better philosophy. I think that people don't think about privacy and technology and AI as being in front of a computer or being on your phone, and it's much bigger than that. I mean, people don't realize that their car is like a big phone communicating data about you all the time. I mean, every car today has at least one SIM card that is continually connecting to cell towers and transmitting information. Cars going past each other, whether it's a Tesla, it's a Mercedes, it's a BMW, these are all part of mesh networks which share data with each other. Tires today have RFID tags that share information about you and your location continually. They're on truck fleets, they're used for truck management, but they're also on cars today. We're seeing 5G enabled tire transmitters that are suddenly becoming, the norm out there. And so, people don't think of their car as being a big phone that's transmitting data, but you look at your dash on your car today and how many apps you have and how you're connecting with your phone and you're connecting with CarPlay or Google Apps. That's just the same as sitting in front of a computer or being on your phone.
Well, and so now I'm going to bring it back to a point Saul raised earlier, many shows ago, and I'm a big fan of it. In real estate, we are behind everything else. Transportation, logistics, the tracking's already there. Marketing, the tracking is there. The information is real time. Now, not to the day, but almost to the second in many cases. In the evolution of technology, real estate is still 30 days behind. Real-time data in real estate is 30 days old. So here we are as brokers, practitioners, we're inputting data in many places. We are not paid for that data. Meanwhile, data brokers are mining the data, scraping to Saul's or any which way we can, and they get paid a fortune for that data. So,
well, and Andreas, it's not necessarily 30 days old anymore. If you think about it, once you enter it into a contract, right? The problem is in the past, contracts were always like this, or they're paper. But now we have contracts online. And when you fill out a listing contract, what's to stop that data from being transmitted immediately to somebody who might benefit from it? So now when a property is put on the market, once the seller signs the listing agreement, the capability is there for the world to know that property's for sale, even before it's entered into a database of properties available for sale. If you have a contract and the contract's online, when people fill out that contract, the terms of that contract could be available to the world before that offer is even presented to a seller of property. So, this whole evolution of the data and where it goes and how it's used is just that. It's an evolution, and there is going to be the good and the bad and the ugly that goes along with all of this. And we'll figure it out as we go, because we don't even think about this stuff, right? Until something goes off and we say, yeah, well, I could see how that might work. And then we find out somebody already has invented it.
yeah.
Right?
Well, that's the paperclip problem, right? Somebody made $1 million on that simple idea, while the rest of us were asleep at the switch. And now we're at the top of the hour. So what's the biggest piece of advice you give to our audience? Because they can't ignore this. But first to Saul and then to Derek. What should they do the next 30 days? Outpace their competition and keep relevant. Not only keep relevant, but continue to thrive.
Yeah, well, since we've been talking about technology and AI the entire hour, I think that people need to get more familiar with the use of AI and not be afraid of it. And the more you use it, the more you'll think of new ways to use it. And just go for it. But don't hold back.
But in line with what you just said, here and how they use it matters. Is there any advice there? And if we can push that to Darren, right? If you like.
Yeah, I think, well, from a real estate perspective, if you have an office building that you're moving into, think about the existing technology and think about buying American-made components and American cameras. And, there's a lot of people don't think about the technology around them and how it puts them at risk. So be cognizant of cheap technology that we're all attracted to, but maybe putting our businesses at risk.
Darren, you mentioned the Internet of Things a while back, and it's just like my scale locked my refrigerator door last night.
No,
Wow.
come on. I believe it.
Oh, yeah, that's funny.
But no, there's an old joke in tech. Nobody gets fired for buying Salesforce, right? Because it exists and it's behemoth and they're great tech. To your point, Darren, maybe the copycat, the blitz-scaled version, whatever that may be, because I'm not going to discount any of the up-and-comers, might not be a great affordable option in the long run, because you're opening yourself up to cyber attacks, ransomware, God knows what, depending on who you choose. Further down the discount trail we go, the likelihood is they had to skimp some. So the MLS, the Microsoft, the Salesforce, right? They're good. But there are other opportunities there. To Saul's point, I use M1. I love M1 for my voice reception service. But they're very much a new company. And while they have SOC 2, they're very well heeled. There's still less, well, maybe not, you just moved. There's still a chance that's a risk. So what do? We can't not use it, clearly. But how we move forward matters. So as far as blitzscaling, I just want to give a shout out. And Saul, you gave me this book originally, Blitzscaling by. Do you remember the author?
Which one?
Blitzscaling.
Don't remember the author.
Oh, now you put me which puts me in my place. So I'm going to refer a different book after you do. Blitzscaling is an incredible read. That's my one book to recommend to our audience. One must read, must listen to. Saul, once to you and then to Darren. What's the one thing they should tune into?
A book?
Book is included. Yep. Paper or digital. I know you have one there.
Matter of fact, well, yeah, I do have one. This is my favorite book just to read in pieces. It's called Real Estate in American History.
Okay.
And it's a great book if you can find it. I think this one I was actually created in like Taiwan or something, right? Because they don't have copyright laws. Because there's no copyright in it. And I had to search forever to find this thing, but it's great because it kind of ties things we're doing today into historical aspects of real estate and real property. So if you're interested in real estate, you can probably get it from the NAR library, but it's Real Estate in American History. The author is P.J. Davies.
And that's non-copyrighted work. It's the original Blitzscaling written by Reid Hoffman on my end. Darren, you cannot say your book because that's an academic book, not because you wrote it. But what's the one book you'd recommend to those trying to keep aware out there?
Well, the book I'm reading is not about technology, but I'll mention it because it's an enjoyable read. It's called The Islander, and it's a biography of Chris Blackwell, who basically brought a lot of stars to stardom, such as U2, Melissa Etheridge, Bob Marley, and it's about his interaction with all of these artists. So if you're interested in music, it's a great read about some interesting changes that he was responsible for. It's really, really interesting.
Well, I want to thank both of you, Becca, who got to leave early, for all you do, bringing this show to life, bringing our audience, almost 5,000 students downloads monthly, top 10% by Google, between 5 and 10%. Global show, global audience, just an elite group to talk to every month. Our 100th episode is December. I'm looking forward to seeing you both on, assuming you can make it. And if not, and for those just came late, tune in for our sector expert interviews. The next one coming is from VP of Commercial Lending, Ives Bank. That's Chad Stewart. You'll see it everywhere you get your audio and your video. It is a recorded episode, unlike today's candid conversation. So again, thank you to my co-hosts, thank you to my audience for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you next month.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Roundtable, powered by CRECo.ai, your source for the latest in real estate and technology. For past episodes, sector interviews, and more great content, follow us on all social media and YouTube at CRECollaborative. You can also find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Please like, subscribe, and share. It really does help. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you at the next Real Estate Roundtable.